Okay, and see Pam on the right-hand side?
Oh, wait a minute.
Come up to panelist.
Co-host. Oh, panelist and then co-host.
Recording in progress.
Change role to attendee.
Recording in progress.
What the?
Can you make her a panelist?
And projects will be recognized as their projects come up in the agenda. If there are members of the public, they will be heard either by, actually by raising your hand. And you can do that by clicking on the little hand next to your name, or by pressing, remember what, someone remind me what the,
*9 on a phone, I
Star-
believe.
thank you, *9 on your phone. So if you're calling in and you're a member of the public at the appropriate time when I ask for comments from the public, if you wish to speak on that particular item, please raise your hand. Again, either by pressing *9 on your phone or by clicking on the little chat, I'm sorry, the little hand icon. Okay. The first item on the agenda tonight is a request for certificate of compliance for 86 Lot 3 Melrose Avenue. And if there are people here for that, please raise your hand and we will let you into the room. We have Tom. Oh, it looks like Tom Minichiello has raised his hand. Can they be made a panelist? I don't have the ability to make anyone panelists.
I can't, but before we go any further, I just want to make sure, are we skipping items 1 and 2 for now?
Oh, I'm sorry. They were in a little box. All right, we'll start with item 1 is review and approval of meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes? Any comments, corrections? All right, by way of a motion to accept the minutes? Do I have a motion?
Sparks here. I make a motion to accept the minutes from August of 2021.
Do I have a second?
Or a second.
All in favor, Danielson, yes?
Sparks, aye.
Voris, aye.
Equal eye.
Motion passes. And then we have restoration update 56 Oak Hill Way. Megan?
Yes, so for this, we have Brandon, I believe he's in as an attendee. He is the environmental monitor for the 25-foot buffer zone restoration at 56 Oak Hill Way. So he has provided the first inspection report, and there were just 2 comments as part of that report that we're looking for some follow-up on. So there were a couple in that report. There's a couple of substitutions of plants from the original planting plan. And so we're looking for approval of those substitutions. And then there's also a question of the timing of the ground cover seeding relative to the knotweed removal. And I can let Brandon go into that a little more about his concern about the seeding at this time.
So Mr. Faniff, if you could unmute yourself and also please join us via video.
Okay,
Thank you.
everyone hear me all right?
Yes, are you driving?
Yeah, I got to pull over.
Okay, we will wait for you to do so.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so what Megan was just saying is true. The plantings, there were a lot of substitutions. chokeberry was brought in to the mix when there wasn't called for. Has everyone read my report, or at least taken a look at it? Because it's 3 or 4 pages.
Megan, let's see, is that in the Zoom drive?
Yes, that's the file that's in the 56 Oak Hill Way file under tonight's meeting. That was the PDF. So that is that report. It is not my report.
That's the 6-page ecosystem solutions.
Yes.
Right. So normally when you have a planning plan, you follow it to the T. And if for any reason you have to switch things up, you first run it by the Conservation Commission or the agent. And there were a total of 83 plants specified on the plan. There were a total of 79 that were actually planted. For example, there were 15 common elderberry plants proposed. None of them were planted. There were also 15 witch hazels proposed, and none of those were planted. However, there were 26 chokeberries planted, and none of those were on the original list. And not only that, but there appear to be 2 different species of chokeberry planted, and some of the species look like cultivars that were made for horticultural practices and not necessarily what the commission might consider to be native.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily that this is all a bad thing, but it needs to be brought to the Conservation Commission's attention first, and we're doing this now after the fact. So I leave that to your discretion and for your discussion. Another thing that was required on the restoration was that straw was to be put down with conservation seed mix underneath it. And what ended up happening was when they took all the woody vegetation out, it looks like they chipped it in place, and they left the chips on the ground. And when I met on the site with Megan, she says, well, this isn't what was, this is not what was on the plan. And not only that, but the wood chips tend to suppress seedlings from coming up. So perhaps we should rake up the wood chips and do it the way it was originally specified on the plan. So that's, another topic for discussion. And it doesn't appear to me that any of the New England erosion control and restoration mix for dry sites, which was specified on the plan, was actually put down, or if it was put down, it's been suppressed by the wood chips. The last and not least issue with this site, which is the main thing that the commission was concerned with, is Japanese knotweed. And the applicant was required to cut it a minimum of 3 times a year. I can say that they've done it at least once this year, but probably just once. But here's the thing, is that I'm coming into this after the fact. My opinion is that you're never going to be able to control Japanese knotweed by just cutting it to the ground. It's too prolific. It's too much of a weed. It's the first plant species to start growing on volcanoes in Japan after they've erupted. They're extremely hardy plants. Just cutting them isn't going to kill it. We'll be here forever cutting them. They're never going to get eradicated. So those are the issues, and I give it back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so my first question relates to your last comment. I hear you say it can never be eradicated. I have seen instances where it has been eradicated. Do you know of methods that are successful?
My opinion is that the only way to do this effectively is with herbicides. And my understanding is that the Brockton Conservation Commission does not like herbicides, but I don't know how else to do this. Another method that I've tried in the past is using thick tarp over it. But what I found is either the Japanese knotweed actually ends up crawling like underneath it and around it. And I've seen that the rhizomes reach as far as 15 feet to get around the tarp, or eventually the tarp becomes brittle and the knotweed will grow up right through it.
Mhm.
I recommend an aquatic safe herbicide like Garlon 3A, done by a licensed pesticide applicator. That's what I recommend.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Could you spell Garland?
Garlon, and it's a triclopyr. It's in the triclopyr family of herbicides. So it's different from a glyphosate, which is most common glyphosate is called rodeo.
Yep.
I'm sorry, not rodeo, but
Roundup.
Roundup, not rodeo. But rodeo is also a glyphosate.
Yep.
So triclopyrs only target broadleaf plants, and they do not have an effect on grasses, which I think it would. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Which is perfect in this situation, because if you let it grow up and you're trying to target the knotweed, you're going to want to target just the knotweed, because you can have tall grasses going up all around it. So you can target the broadleaf plant, and the grass will still continue to grow. And the particular Garlon product is called Garlon 3A.
Okay. So again, I actually have the report up in front of me. I can share it on the screen if that would be helpful. You went through a lot of information, Brandon.
I know. It's a lot to take in, yeah.
Would it help the commissioners and Brandon in going back over this if I display the report? I mean, it's in a reasonable format. It's not all text. There are tables, there are pictures,
Yep.
and I think that would be helpful, I would imagine. Any objections? All right, I'm going to share my screen. So Brandon, why don't we start with the plantings? You talk about the general conditions, which you've gone over. I think
Yep.
we probably all understand that, unless anyone, any of the other commissioners have any questions on the general conditions? Okay. So this is the planting inventory. Again, if you could just go over that, I would appreciate it again.
Okay, so I have 4 columns. Species that were supposed to be planted, the number of said plant species that were specified on the plan to be put in the ground, and then the third column is the number of plants I actually observed at that species, and then on the far right column is the net difference between the plants that were specified in the plan and the plants that I actually observed. Right. So do you actually want me to go through each one of them, or is it pretty self-evident what you see in there?
I think it's self-evident. I think the question I would have is, do we know why substitutions were made and, the specified plants weren't used?
I can only speculate because I never got an answer from the contractor. But the most common reason for substitutions is because the nursery didn't have that particular species, or they didn't have the particular size plant that was specified.
Right.
Okay. So what'll happen is the nursery will do a substitution for you. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, they should have the property owner should have come back to the commission.
Right, and I have a feeling that this is a contractor that's not as familiar with the protocol for
Mhm.
planting and conservation commissions, which is why I'm now in front of you tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So before we go back to the knotweed, I just want to go over this. So I believe, and Megan, could you just, when was this project permitted, Megan?
The order of conditions was issued 2020, probably, I believe July. It would have been the July meeting of 2020.
Okay. And it's been kind of a rough year, so forgive me if I'm not recalling the planting list. I believe that these plants were probably recommended because they would have been found in the area or suitable for the environment where they were to be planted.
Right, and for example, sweet pepper bush is a very common wetland or near wetland plant. And there were
Right.
4 of those, and swamp azalea is another wetland plant. But you'll notice that I have in parentheses there cultivar.
Yeah,
It was clear to me that it wasn't the swamp azalea that you would find in the woods.
right. Right. So my question for you, I mean, this is a varied plant list. It would provide variety. And in my assessment, it would be best to stick with that. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the substitutions and plants that were, there were what, 1, 2, others unspecified. So really the only 2 that weren't planted at all were witch hazel and the speckled alder.
The common elderberry did not get planted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're correct. Common
Right, and the speckled alder, right.
Yeah.
And also the witch hazel. No, you were right. So it was 3 species: elderberry, witch hazel, and speckled alder.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
So-
I know that you, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
Go ahead,
okay.
Bonnie.
This is Bonnie Spark speaking. I feel like, at least in the case of the aronia, which is the chokecherries, those can make a good alternative to the elderberry because they are a fall and winter berry. So there's 2 of them that are native and a 3rd one that is technically native, but it's due to natural cross hybridization between them. So the red and the black cross hybridized to create the purple. So if it's one of those 3 or all 3 of them, it would serve the same sort of environmental purpose as the elderberry as far as a food for native species. So it might feed some slightly different creatures, but it is common to the area and would provide those very important food berries in the months where the birds really need them. So I feel like, at least in the case of the aronia, that one seems fair to, as well as the clethra, which I can't remember what they're called colloquially. The clethra is another really common one. You see them all of the time when you're driving on the highway.
Right, that's the sweet pepper bush.
The sweet pepper. The colloquial names, I often forget them. But yeah, I feel like that rhododendron is the only one that's I find disruptive. But I did want to speak on the use of the Garlon. So I personally, I used to do environmental testing at a chemical facility for all of these chemicals. I've worked with pretty much everything that is available commercially as well as to the public. And the only problem that I can see with the Garlon is, while that is true, it does target the broadleaf and it doesn't necessarily harm the aquatic invertebrates, but it does harm the non-target aquatic vegetation. So if that was something that was to be used around a wetland, you can pretty much count on the fact that it's going to run off into the water, and the water-based plant life is going to suffer for it. So I recognize knotweed is a problem, but when you're basically sitting in the water, much like this area pretty much is, you're going to end up with runoff directly into that wetland system. And I do not feel comfortable at all utilizing the Garlon, also known as the rodeo, in an area this close to wetlands. And that is what I have to say about that.
Any other commissioners want to weigh in at this point? And I can only, let's see, I think I might be able to scroll down to see everybody. Okay, following up on that, I don't, having lived for a very long time now, any herbicide that has once been determined as safe usually comes back around to being determined is not, and it's persistent, and it causes more problems than just to the particular applicator, the individual applying it. And glyphosate is a perfect example where, 10 years ago it's like, oh, it's not harmful at all once it's been applied. And now, of course, we are finding that in fact it is. So I would like alternative methods explored. The instance that I'm thinking of in my professional role, I thought they weren't applying glyphosate. They were cutting back, pulling seedlings before they get a foothold. And it really has been very effective, but I can follow up on that and confirm that in fact they weren't using glyphosate on the more mature plants.
It's also been pretty well documented that utilizing most things don't work on knotweed to start with, and additionally, knotweed needs to generally be injected with a very measured amount. So literally, that means taking a measured amount to every single cane of knotweed within an area if you're going to have a successful eradication through a chemical intervention, which really is, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to go, because you can't just spray it, because if you spray it, you might kill the top, but your rhizomes are not going to die. And so considering even using something like that, what are the chances of that being done correctly or being within budget to even have done? So I have some concerns.
So if I'm not mistaken, and Megan, you can jump in here, what you're looking for, let's see, let's just go over the recommendations. Okay, so we want to refresh the erosion controls, which I think that's a given. Chokeberry and our substitutions, therefore I leave it to the commission. I mean, I guess I would ask the other commissioners. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Bonnie, about the chokeberry, but it is a different season. Elderberry usually produces fruit in the, at least my understanding is, in the summertime, the summer months. Any other comments, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, like I said, I just know that the chokecherry is a good fall and winter food.
Yeah.
There's of the three of them, one of them, I believe it's the red, persists through the winter, whereas the other two are only during the fall, which is really, so I don't know what's planted there, but that's what I remember of the chokecherries.
Yeah, Brandon here again. I found Aronia arbustifolia, which is the red chokeberry, and then the melanocarpa, which is the black. So there was more black than there was red, but the two of them were there.
Okay. Megan, do you have any comments? Anything to add?
I think in terms of the substitutions, I would agree with Bonnie that I think there is some benefit to having the chokeberry, especially as a fall and potentially winter persisting fruit. In terms of value for migrating birds in particular, it's really that fall and winter stock that's, I would think, really adding something to the landscape. Of course, ideally you'd want ones that could be providing food year round, but I would think if you're going to have something fruiting, it would be valuable to have something fruiting during migration season. So that would be my opinion on leaving the chokeberry as it is. In terms of the knotweed, Bonnie brought up the injection of the herbicide into the knotweed cane. That would be my understanding of how it needs to be done. If the commission were going to consider it, it would need to be specified that it would be the cane by cane injection in order to have the best chance of success. And we would think less chance of runoff and issues, but again, that's assuming theoretical perfect application without user error and anything like that. So that part, again, I would leave that to the commission. I see the injection as a possible alternative if mechanical removal is not sufficient, but I know also accepting the injection of the herbicide, you are taking on the risk of human error and the extra expense in doing it that way. But I think the injection would probably be the only way the commission wants to consider, if they want to consider it.
Any comments from the other commissioners? Okay. Brandon, before we continue, you talk about the New England seed mix not having been planted. And what I'm reading is if it has, then it's being maintained as lawn and cannot be identified. And then if I'm not mistaken, or I'm not reading this incorrectly, you recommend reseeding the area with the New England seed mix, but then you go on to say, of course, the wood chips would need to be removed, the wood chips in the mulch, the area spread with straw mulch. But then you go on to say that it's a bit of a catch-22, in part because of the knotweed. But then you're basically saying if it's, I think I understand now. So basically what you're saying is if it's, once it starts to grow, and if you're still trying to eradicate the knotweed, you're going to, the landscaper or whoever is working on the knotweed will need to work through the grass mix to find the knotweed. And you're muted.
I was going to agree with it. Yes, that's exactly what I was saying, Madam Chair. And if the grass and the flowers get thick, it's going to make it difficult to get in there and work the knotweed. However, I like what was said about what I would call the cut and dab method of getting each individual. It is a lot of work, but it's much safer than doing what we call a foliar application, where there might be some wind drift into the wetlands. But I still see that as a better alternative to just cutting it every year, which is, I see it as being a never-ending situation. And if the grass in this conservation seed mix grows up, it's going to make it more difficult to find the knotweed. So none of these are a good situation, but the lesser of the evils is to do the individual cut and dab application.
And as a response to that, from what I have read, research has basically stated that cutting knotweed is almost worse than leaving it be, because as you cut it, what you're doing is you're giving the plant an opportunity to strengthen its rhizomes and to spread. And so every time you cut knotweed, you risk basically forcing it to spread itself wider as it looks for a place that it can grow. So I find cutting it to be a little counterproductive. Even though it seems good on the surface, it is often worse than, as I said, just leaving it alone. The ultimate way to have it dealt with is it's like a 5 to 8 foot deep. You have to lift it with a bobcat or machinery, remove it, layer it with the tarps, which is very disruptive to the land and to the area. So it's sort of rock and a hard place, but there are definitely better options available. And unfortunately, I really do feel like the injection might be, if we really want to actually be rid of the knotweed, the injections are probably the best option for actual potential success.
Agreed.
All right, do we,
I have a quick question.
yes, please.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you. I was wondering, since there is a little bit of a difference between the number of plants that were initially requested versus what was planted, would it be possible to get some common elderberry in there to fill in some of the holes? So therefore, you'd be able to provide some of the migrating birds, especially the springtime birds and early summer birds, with a food source that might be more native to them. And also the concept of removing the wood chips and then reestablishing the planting of the native mix. What is it? The erosion control mix. I don't know. It seems to me like it might be more permanent as far as a prevention for erosion. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems to me that eventually wood chips do disintegrate, don't they? And have less of an erosion control potential. Is that true or no?
That is true, but that's not my call. That's your call.
Wood chips, in my experience is that wood chips actually take quite a while to break down and incorporate into the soil. If they're not chipped from plants that are native to the area, I mean, you're introducing, I'm sure, a slightly different chemical structure. And they aren't normally used for erosion control because they actually can facilitate erosion in certain situations because the rain will get under it and wash out from under.
Right.
Right. Wood chips often float and get
Yes.
floating. Right. There are what I call a different kind of chip. It's called root tailings. So when you chip up tree roots, they actually break up differently, and they have a more of a clawed shape to them, and they tend to dig in to the ground. But and they're very effective. And I've seen this personally. But you're right. Wood chips tend to float. These wood chips have been here so long, they kind of, I don't know, they've kind of gone in, like settled into the soil a little bit. And it's not like it's a large expanse, like you have a lot of fetch on a hill. This is a very small area. But, it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It's the conservation seed mix is what was specified on the plan, and it's not there. growing it over the wood chips would be difficult.
Well,
So I
because you,
understand.
yeah.
I
No,
understand. I understand that, but it's really, it's your call. It's your call.
Yeah, I mean, and generally wood chips are placed to prevent plants from growing,
We,
you know, to kind of temper the growth of weeds and things, so.
Well, what if, so we haven't spread the seed mix yet. So what if we were to leave the wood chips as they are, but use that as the new base for the seed mix and then cover the seed mix with the hay or the straw, which was what was supposed to be there in the first place. So you'd be creating sort of the layer of moist humidity where the wood chips will begin to actually disintegrate at a faster rate than if they're just sitting on the top.
Well, what I would do is you're going to have to rake in the new seeds, right? You'd rake it in, you'd be raking the wood chips and more or less then seeding it and then raking it all in together. I think that would still be effective myself. I don't know, what do you think of
Okay.
that?
So I've heard, let's see. As far as the grass seed goes in for erosion control, leaving the wood chips in place, placing the seed over that, and then laying in the straw to keep the seed in place, keep the moisture in.
I think raking the wood chip.
Well, I think what Brandon was saying is that you'd rake the seeds in anyway, and you'd be raking them in to the wood chips.
And the soil.
Right, right. And then Joyce had suggested, and I like that idea, that it looks like we're 4 plants short and plants that weren't on the list. So maybe it would be a little more than 4 plants of the elderberry be installed, be planted to provide spring, summer food source. And then,
Yeah, and elderberry, the fruit for elderberry is generally available in August, if I remember right.
That is true. August to September is when elderberries produce.
Right.
I think what, which is necessary food source as well, but I think what Joyce, you were thinking was the spring migration and providing some kind of source if this is an area that migrating birds stop in.
And I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head that would create a nut or a berry in the spring. You know, they could be flowering in the spring, but generally they
Right.
develop over the summertime. So I don't really have much to offer you.
So the only thing that I can think of is we have natively here, and this actually literally already grows in Brockton natively, is the black raspberries. So those, while a cultivar of raspberry usually produces in late summer, the native black raspberries will produce much earlier than that. They're a big food plant for the blue jays and the fledgling birds in the late spring.
Are you talking about black raspberry or blackberry?
Black raspberries.
Okay.
Yeah, black raspberries have the same characteristics as a raspberry, except they're not ripe until they're black. So the quickest way to tell which is flip the leaf over. If it's light underneath, it's a raspberry. If it's dark underneath, it's a blackberry.
So we have a pretty full agenda. This is what I'm going to suggest. I think Megan has heard everything that the commissioners have suggested. Do we want to just ask Megan to follow up with Brandon and come up with a plan, and she can report back to the commission in September.
Sparks here. I agree with that.
Okay. Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Yep, have a
The
good night.
next- You too. The next item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for 490 North Carey Street. Do we have anyone from, Our
North
attendees.
Carey Street would be J.K. Holmgren's office. I believe Matt Tavares is here from that office.
Pam looks like she's diligently trying to promote him to panelist. And she can't talk, she's muted.
There's a long list of attendees, so
I know.
I've
Okay,
got to search. Okay.
Can you guys hear me all right?
yep.
All right.
And again, we just spent quite a bit of time on the first item, so I am going to ask that we try to keep things moving along.
Yeah, for sure. So have any of the pictures of the new stone that have been added to the wall been looked at? Have you seen those yet?
There should be a comparison photo at the end of my report. So
Awesome.
there's a photo from our original meeting, I think in June, and then one from after when the stone went in.
Perfect. Yeah, so basically they added a bunch of crushed stone all around the stone wall to help support it and to help with the runoff. And in my opinion, I don't believe that any of that crushed stone is going to make it to the wetland itself. It is, I believe it's like 72 feet away from the wetland itself. So the crushed stone's probably not going to make it there. And it seems like it's going to be doing a pretty good job of stabilizing the wall as well.
Any of the other commissioners have comments? My one comment, I mean, again, Megan does say, though I cannot confirm the long-term stability once the erosion control is removed. I would like to see some type of edging placed.
Okay, you mean on top of the wall?
Where the erosion, maybe where the erosion control. I don't know. I'm just concerned that the smaller stone in a heavy storm event may migrate into the abutting area.
Okay, even though it's 72 feet away?
The abutting area is immediately adjacent to it.
Oh, yeah, okay. I missed you say that. Yeah, I mean, it potentially could wash over. You're probably right, but it's.
And then as it migrates, will, are you going to have erosion of that area? I don't look at this and see something that just doesn't look like it's a great solution for stabilizing that edge.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you think the edging in place of where the erosion control barrier, would that be your main concern, is migration, from the toe of the slope, with the adding edging to replace what's being held essentially by the erosion control? Is that the solution you're talking about?
I think that would help.
Yeah, I mean, that was my only comment. The site looks clean and stable for now. My only comment was that the erosion control barrier is still in place. So the edge of the stone at the toe of the slope is being maintained by the erosion control barrier, but it's designed to be removed, and if not removed, it will degrade. So, I mean, if the commission's not opposed to putting in, you know, a more permanent sort of lawn type edging, I would think that would solve the concern about migration from the toe of the slope.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's what I would prefer.
okay.
Yeah, I can see on that second picture from the 3 files of September 8th, you can already see it starting to slide down.
Right.
But again, yeah, like a simple rubber edging would probably do the trick.
Okay.
So I think we want to see that installed before we vote to issue the
Okay.
certificate of compliance.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Now, I skipped over 86 Melrose when we
Yes,
went
and
back to the other item, so sorry about that.
I don't believe, I mean, they can raise their hand if anyone is here for 86 Melrose, but I did receive a request to continue because on September 8th, the owners were having Home Depot come and move the fence, but I guess there was some miscommunication about how much of the fence needed to be moved. And so Home Depot was not willing to relocate the fence according to the plan. So at this point, Bill Self was requesting a continuance to the October meeting because at this point, the contractor has offered to pay to have someone that he hires to relocate the fence, since it's been difficult for the owners to arrange to have it moved. The contractor has offered to have it
Okay.
moved for them, but they need time after September 8th.
Okay,
Do that,
so
so they're
that would,
requesting, yeah.
that would be October 20th.
October 20th, yes, would be the next meeting.
Do I have a motion to continue 86 Melrose Avenue to October 20th?
Sparks here, so moved.
Second,
For a second,
all in favor? Danielson, yes?
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth,
Equal I.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 85 Peterson Avenue.
I believe,
I think Matt's here
There-
for that.
yes, and I believe they've also requested a continuance ahead of the meeting in order to refresh the wetlands line because it is out of date.
Yeah, Brad's gonna be out there. I believe it's early next week to reflag it. So we just gotta wait for
Okay.
him to reflag
And
them.
this hearing hasn't opened yet, is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
And it does, as of the date of Megan's report, there was no DEP file number.
Okay.
So if you might want to check into that. I don't know when you submitted to DEP, but what that means is while the hearing can open at the next meeting, it won't be able to close
Right.
without a file number.
Okay. I'll check with Scott about that.
Yep. All right, the next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 219 Bellevue Avenue.
Yep. And then there should be Scott Rubin here trying to talk about that as well.
I don't see a Scott Rubin in our list. We have we have Buckley from Plymouth Deeds, Claire from LEC, a David Asak, David Mahoney, Gene
Scott's
Sullivan.
there.
Oh, there he
Yeah,
is.
he's
right
still an
there.
And I
attendee.
promoted him.
Awesome.
He's been promoted. He's not showing up, though.
Is it just taking a second
He might.
or two or three?
Yeah, I mean, he's showing up. Oh, wait a minute. No, he didn't. All right, let's try him again. Okay, now
well,
he's, now he's,
is Scott the applicant?
No, he's
No.
the attorney.
I'm sorry.
He's the attorney.
Okay.
I don't know why he won't, is he there?
Did he step? If you made him a panelist and if he's showing up, that should mean he's
It
still
says he's put,
logged
it says-
in.
yeah, it says he'll,
There we go.
Oh, there he is.
he must have been napping.
Hello.
Mr. Rubin, if you could start your
There I
video,
am.
thank you.
Sorry, you kept asking me to join as a panelist and I thought it was just an attendee. My apologies.
Okay, are we waiting for someone on your end to speak? So first, do we have proof of the abutters notification?
Yes.
Okay, so that's been received. Again, this has not been assigned a DEP file number either.
No, not as
So
of today.
So the commission cannot close the hearing. We can open it, but we cannot close it until that number is issued. Okay, so who's doing the presentation? And again, I'm sorry, we did spend quite a bit of time on the first item, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make this as short as possible. Again, Attorney Rubin on behalf of the applicant, Marcia Dos Reyes. This is an after the fact request, a notice of intent related to some expansion of yard work that was done at this single family residence. There was a notification out to the applicant some time ago, which brought it to my attention. There was an encroachment on the neighbor's property, which is Rocky Mountain Spring Water. And it took us a little bit of time to resolve that particular issue through the cooperation actually of the property owner there. It is vacant land that's to the west of this site. I know there's a active well down in this particular area. And but through extensive negotiations, we were able to negotiate a license agreement. And part of that license agreement was necessary for us to file this notice of intent, because any work that we're going to do possibly will be on this particular piece, on their particular portion of their property. And so we certainly didn't want to come before the commission without that agreement in place. So we do have an agreement in place that obviously with the commission's permission, we'd like to be able to save a portion of this project that was done. And there was some encroachment into the 25-foot buffer zone, as Ms. Chavez has pointed out. Matt and I and Scott Ferrier went through the September 10th letter, and all the points are well taken. And quite frankly, we would just like to have an opportunity, unless the commission has some additional thoughts other than what's listed in Ms. Chavez's report, we would just ask that we continue the hearing for a period of time until we can provide the board with some additional wetland flagging and to the determinations, and provide the board with a report that hopefully will satisfy the commission in the future. So I would just suggest that we could possibly just continue this, other than any questions or comments that the rest of the commission has that they might want done between now and the next meeting.
Okay, I'm going to start. Megan, and I just shared my screen. Can everyone see this plan that shows the limit of work and what is flagged as previous BVW?
Yep.
And Megan, you talk about this in your second paragraph on the second page.
Lost everything.
So if someone could talk to that, that's a dramatic difference from what's shown on the plan for the wetland line.
Yeah, I think we need to send our wetlands individual. I think Matt is going to have our wetlands specialist go out there and just verify this flagging, because it is different in form from what was originally on. It's hard to see, but certainly the light blue lines are the original wetlands flagging from the original certificate and as-built plan that was filed. So it appears to be different than what, I'm sorry, it's the other way around, excuse me. The light blue flagging is what is, I believe, what we flagged, and the green line is what was designated originally. So, you know, we just want to go out there and just verify what's on the ground and answer those questions so that we can come back better prepared to answer them.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions?
There is Mr. Mahoney.
I'm not done with the commissioners yet, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any commissioner, I'm sorry, Pam. Any commissioners have any other questions? Okay, Pam, if you would make Mr. Mahoney a panelist, we will recognize him or her, whoever.
He moved.
There we go. Looks like he's coming on. Appreciate it.
You there?
All right.
Sometimes it takes a minute or two.
Yeah, and I don't see him here, so he has to be.
Also in
There.
the future, I think also for members of the public, we might be able to just allow them to speak.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can
do you
allow,
rather than-
I can allow him to speak without promoting them to panelists.
Oh,
Yeah.
then we should do that. I'm sorry.
However, he seems
I'm always
to-
used to,
He's not there. I
okay.
don't.
Did we hear someone?
Just me.
Yeah, he's not there. He had his hand up, but he's not there now.
Okay, well, the hearing, so do I have a motion to continue? He will have an opportunity to speak at the next meeting.
Sparks here. I make a motion to continue 219 Bellevue Ave to the October meeting.
Do I have a second?
For a second,
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Boris, aye.
Equal I.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 940 Belmont Street.
So that one, as you recall at the previous meeting, so the August meeting, we discussed tabling that item
Yep.
to not receiving a submission. I believe the commission was told that we should be expecting a submission for the upcoming month. So we did continue it to this meeting. I believe there's been some discussion with Beta Group and their stormwater engineers as of a couple days ago. However, the commission has not received any updated information in a few months now. So I don't have anything else to report other than the commission should consider if it will allow another continuance and what would be the appropriate amount of time, or if the discussion of tabling this until we're certain there is a new report available.
Matt, I'll give you an opportunity to quickly.
Yep. So Beta and Mother Construction they're going over the review letter together, and they are working on closing everything up. Scott talked with them, I believe it was last Friday, about all of that.
So what does that mean?
They're just working through the review comments that Beta had. Mother Construction, them are going back and forth.
Okay, so again, very experienced with this. That could be another month's worth of back and forth.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't seen
Okay.
seen the review comments or anything, but
I would entertain a motion to table this project. Do I have that motion? Joyce, you want to make it?
Yeah, I moved to table the project at 940 Belmont Street.
Okay, second.
Sparks here, I second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forest side.
Winkler, aye.
Okay, it has been tabled, and what that means effectively is that when you're ready to come back, it will need to be renoticed to abutters and in the newspaper.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 135 Elliott Street.
Yep.
You're here for everything tonight, Matt.
Yeah, I know. I think this is the last one for me actually, but yeah, so we have the approval letter from Beta, and from Megan. I believe, yeah, yep, from September 9th.
Is there also one from September 13th?
I might. Scott gave me one from September 9th.
So, Megan, I have in my notes that we need to confirm the abutters are notified on this. Are we just,
Yep.
this, your report indicates this is the first meeting for the hearing. And we're just
It'll be the first meeting with discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, they were ready to open and we received a butter notification a while ago.
Okay.
But I believe it's only ever been opened in the sense of continuance was immediately requested. So this would be the first hearing that would have discussion in it. But we did receive the abutter notification back when it would have opened.
All right, and we do have a DEP file number. Okay. Megan, do you want to go over your report then?
Sure. So I don't believe the commission has really taken a look at this, at least at the hearing. I know you've had a chance to look at the iterations as they come through, but this, generally speaking, this is part of what's going to be or has been proposed as a subdivision of, I believe it's a split zoned parcel that currently has an existing warehouse building on it. And they are proposing to build multifamily units to the front of that building facing Elliott Street. So it's before the commission because they are within the 100-foot buffer zone to BBW associated with Trout Brook and also floodplain associated with Trout Brook. So we've gone back and forth a couple of times about the BBW boundary, but at this point, I think the boundary is accurately shown on the plans and the 25-foot is accurately shown on the plans so that they are proposing work outside the 25-foot, but they were proposing some of the pavement and the structures for the multifamilies would require filling floodplain. So they have the compensatory storage calculations for a restoration or a compensatory storage area to the rear of the site, so closer to the existing warehouse building, with a planting plan associated with that. So at this point, they've provided the calculations for that I asked for, as well as the limits of work for that area, because the concern was access to it, and they're proposing access to the compensatory storage area from around the warehouse building as opposed to through the buffer zone. So it looks like as they're proposing it, it's less area of impact to buffer zone than if they had directly accessed it from the eastern side of the building. So at this point, yeah, my comments have been addressed, but due to the sensitivity of the work, I have a number of recommended special conditions. Should the commission consider issuing an order of conditions, again, because they are doing a compensatory storage area and it is going to be close to the 25-foot. There's several conditions I would recommend to help deal with
Okay.
the soil stockpiling and so on.
Matt, do you have the plan handy? Do you want to share your screen and walk through this? That was a lot of information that I think referring
Yeah.
to the plan would be very helpful.
I actually
the
don't have it.
commissioners?
I don't have it on this computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have it. I will
Oh.
share it. So. I believe this is the existing conditions plan,
Yep.
and this is the floodplain that is being discussed.
Yep.
And we will see it's not shown, it doesn't carry forward on to the other sheets that I can tell.
Okay.
I think that would have been helpful to have that there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because not, but this is generally, and Megan, you can weigh in. Let me go back. Okay. So again, it's hard to see because the floodplain is not shown on this plan unless I'm missing something.
No, you're right.
But it's this area here, Megan, that is
Yes, try sheet C4.
C4. Hold on.
Yeah, so one more sheet down. I believe that
Is
hatched
this the
area-
hatched area?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe
Yeah.
that is the floodplain fill area.
Yep.
And then the compensatory storage that's being proposed is over in this area.
Yes, that is an inset of it.
I was
so
going
it's
to say
actually-
that,
Yeah,
right,
it's a zoom
which is
in.
also deceptive because when I first looked at this, I thought that was the area, which seemed quite large.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little blow up of the area.
So in essence, again, I just, there we go. So again, it's, I think the plan could have shown this a bit better for
Okay.
everyone because I can't see here the hatched area is gone on this drawing,
Right.
and yet it shows the compensatory storage area. And there's more detail here that shows the grading for the compensatory storage.
Yep.
Does anyone have questions? Any of the commissioners?
I guess it's a question. So where did you get those plans from? Because the plans that I've got in the folder are definitely not looking like those plans. So I've got the ones that are all in color that look like a horrible, it's just, I can't even see what I'm looking at. There's just so many colors going on. But
I pulled this from the drive, Google Drive.
because all I have for the plans is the Evolix Way Def Sub Rev 9320.
Oh, I saw something that I didn't even open. Are you talking about the one that
That's
the
the next
icon
one.
showed? The
That's
icon
a different, yeah.
showed some crazy, I didn't open it because it looked like just, so this is the title. Can you see the title of the plan on my screen? Maybe not.
CC and BB, CC
Yeah.
and PB plans.
With the
Bonnie,
date of-
Bullets Way is the next one.
I'm sorry, Pam.
That's Cypress. Evolix Way is the Cypress plan, the next thing on the agenda.
Not the one I'm showing.
No, the
The
one
one
she,
Bonnie's referencing.
the one
Okay.
she's referencing is the next one on the agenda.
Oh, that's, I've got, I don't know. It's weird. I don't have, that's what I've got. That's what it says. 53 Cypress and 300 Rockland are one.
But we're doing Elliott, right?
Oh, we're on Elliott.
Oh, this is Elliott Street.
Yeah.
Oh, that would explain it. I'm like, this does not look at all like what I've got. Okay, I feel a lot
Right,
better now.
right.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry, that's definitely why I was having trouble following along. I was like, where is this happening? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for your
Um,
patience.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? The only other comment I think I have is relative to your comment, Megan, about the additional test pit in the northwest corner.
Yep.
Of the proposed subsurface infiltration. Generally, that should be done before you come to the commission and get approval, because if there are any, if you get in there and find that the soils are not suitable for infiltration, you're going to have to come back to the commission
Right,
for any revisions.
right.
And, the commission will determine if it's substantial or not and requires an amended order or even a new notice of intent, which would be highly unlikely, but we generally really like to see that
Okay.
information done first, so
Yeah.
that you know that what you're designing can be done.
Right.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this project? And if so, please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any. It doesn't sound like any of the commissioners have any comments or concerns that need to be addressed. Megan's have been, and she has a list of special conditions that would be incorporated into an order of conditions. I think, again, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns about any of those suggested conditions? All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for 135 Elliott Street.
Do I have a second?
Second,
That was Joyce Burris. And all in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Eclair, aye.
Okay, that was closing the public hearing. Do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the conditions outlined in Megan's report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Forrest.
All in favor, oh yes, Bonnie, that the motion was made by Bonnie Sparks. All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Eclair, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, can you just, who made the motion and who seconded it?
Bonnie made the motion and Joyce seconded.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 53 Cypress Drive. And looks like we have David Asak here for that.
Is Azu not here?
I don't see a zoo. I've not seen his name at all.
Can anyone hear me? Here we are. I'm Attorney David Asak. I'm here with Azu from ET Engineering and the applicant George Heichel. I believe
Okay.
peer review by Beta Engineering. I believe that Azu has satisfied all of the requirements, so I will turn the microphone over to him.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is confirm that we have received evidence of a butter notification.
send that.
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, that's good.
Megan, do we have that?
Megan is muted. Megan, you gotta mute
I
yourself.
know I think she's looking.
Oh,
She can hear.
Okay, yes, I can hear now.
Okay, do we have evidence of butter notification?
Yes, we did receive the scans of the return receipts for the renotification.
Okay, and do we have a DEP number?
Yes, from previously.
Okay. All right, thank you. Azu,
good
we're on
evening,
a
madam.
roll. We're on a roll. You know, there's one. You're
Good evening.
between.
Mhm. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Good evening, Pam. Good evening, Megan. My name is Azue, for the record, my name is Azue Teniro, the registered professional engineer and registered land surveyor responsible for the work, representing the applicant, George Heichel. And this application is for a 4-lot subdivision that includes the construction of a new roadway to provide frontage to 2 new house lots. The application includes stormwater management design consistent with the stormwater management guidelines specified by the Department of Environmental Protection. I believe we went through several iterations of review by your consultants, Beta Group, as well as Ms. Shave. I believe, Madam Chair, members of the commission, while we felt that some of the comments by your environmental consultants were rather extensive and perhaps not outside the scope of the what would have been required normally, I believe we addressed all the comments, and I believe we have satisfied all the review comments, and I would entertain any questions or comments, and then would welcome the commission's approval of the project so that we can continue our review process hearing with the planning board at its scheduled hearing in October. So we thank you.
So the plans indicate they were revised as of 9/3. Can you walk through what the revisions were to the plans?
Yes, Madam Chair. Megan or Pam, would you be able to share the files? I'm using our attorney Isaac's computer.
There it is. I've got it up.
Oh, okay, great. Excellent. So, so if you're looking at the bottom of the page as the south and looking to the top as in north, the items that we had to deal with is the drainage basin number B, which is right above the BVW. Where the cursor to your right.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we included an emergency overflow, which is what you see right there that says right above the 25-foot buffer description, it says proposed 10-foot wide emergency spillway with concrete baffle. That's what we included. We also included a level spreader so that when the water from the basin under normal flow conditions comes out through the riprap, that there will be a concrete baffle also that allows the water to meter out so that you don't have a scouring effect. I thought that was a pretty good comment. On the northerly basin, which we call basin number A, they had asked that we include all the area coming from Cypress Street, across the street, and the abutting property at number 33 Cypress and number 25. If you look at the top contours, you can see that the 179, 178, they all drain across that stone wall that forms the northwesterly boundary between the locus and the abundant land of 33 Cypress, so that all that water can be intercepted by the basin number A. They wanted also to include the rim elevations and the invert elevations on the profiles, which we have done. And Ms. Shave asked that we extend the erosion control barrier, and that will be, I believe, on sheet number 8 of 9. We extended that, and while I was kicking and screaming, I think their comments have led, in my view, to a fairly decent project design, and so we appreciate that. One of the other comments that was made related, Madam Chair, members of the commission, related to the calculation of the treatment. And what we've done is elaborate on the calculations to demonstrate that we have at least 80% removal of TSS. So overall, the project, I believe, Madam Chair and members of the commission, that the project is consistent with the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as your local policy of 25-foot no activity buffer, and we've respected that. So, and if you look at, in reality, while we have filed a notice of intent to encompass a subdivision, if you look at 100-foot, Ms. Shave, if you would zoom into the plan again, you can see that the much of at least 50% of the subdivision is outside of the 100-foot jurisdictional boundary. And so, and I believe with the right order of conditions and the adequate monitoring, which actually, while I'm the applicant's representative, I believe that adequate monitoring during construction will serve to assuage any potential concerns about the 25-foot no touch. And I think the construction methods that we do employ, we will be very much respectful of that buffer zone, and that will be staked out and that will be installed in terms of the erosion control and the limits of construction, so that your inspectors, perhaps someone from Beta or Ms. Shave, can indeed verify that the work is being progressed as approved by the commission. So I do think that you have a good project here. And,
okay. So Megan mentions in her report, one of the things that the commission asked for at the last meeting was to explore reducing the size of the road. It really does take up quite a bit of the land area. I'm looking for the scale, so I can't scale it out right here. I don't see it on the plan. It says as noted. Ah, there it is. I'm sorry.
It's 1 inch over 40 on
right.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Right. So let's see.
So we would be 100%, and I think when we go back to the planning board, we would present that to them. But I do know that based on the meetings that we have had, and with the input of the fire department, the board did not seem inclined to reduce the width of the pavement. The board's requirement for pavement is 34, which quite honestly, I believe it's rather extensive. The required right of way for a roadway in Brockton is 50 feet. Generally, most communities that I work in, Stoughton, Easton tend to require 40-foot layout and a pavement width of 18 to 22 feet, depending on the number of homes proposed. For all intents and purposes, 53 existing 53 of Cypress Street will continue. The Cypress Drive will continue to have its driveway from Cypress Drive. So you're only really talking 2 houses that would have access from Evolis Way. So the 34-foot wide pavement required by the planning board, I would concur, Madam Chair, that it's rather extensive, and perhaps the commission could express its concern to the planning board, and maybe, just maybe, the planning board will be inclined to entertain that reduction. We actually did a project on Early Street about 4 years ago, and they did reduce that, but that was because the neighbors were inclined to encourage that. When we went to the planning board, we actually had originally requested that the requirement for 2 sidewalks be waived to 1 sidewalk. On a 2-lot subdivision, for all intents and purposes, they are requiring sidewalk on both sides of the road. That,
Okay.
so.
So I mean, I think we would be inclined. Megan, a question for you. I've never seen anything, but I mean, it may be handled through staff, which would be, of course, acceptable. But does the planning board seek input from other agencies in City Hall on applications?
I mean, generally, in terms of planning board looking to other boards, the reason why planning board, as part of their either site plan review or their subdivision review process, they request or require that applicants go to conservation first, if there is conservation jurisdiction, because they want the plan that they receive to be what is approved by the commission, and that addresses, the concerns of the Wetlands Protection Act. So my understanding, and at least of how that process works, is that once a plan receives an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, it moves on to the planning board with the understanding that that plan has that order of conditions from the commission. So I think, in terms of making a note or a recommendation, I don't know sort of within the framework where that fits in, that, if the commission grants an order of conditions, they are accepting this plan as shown. So they could, I don't see there's anything stopping the commission from making a comment, but that comment is going along with the fact that the commission also approved this plan, so.
Right, and it seems like a catch-22 because if the commission, there's no guarantee. And I'm not sure, I don't know what the history of the planning board is and how frequently people ask for waivers, but as Mr. Itanero pointed out, other communities certainly consider that, and where it makes sense in a project like this, do waive the standard requirements for what would be a much larger subdivision, warranting a different roadway construction than this one. This just, I have a problem approving a project with a roadway that is oversized for the development. And I feel hamstrung that the board would have to approve it with just a basic note that, we would support a waiver. So were you saying that the applicant would be willing to submit their application to the planning board requesting a waiver of the certain roadway standards for this project to reduce the,
Madam Chair, we actually have an application before the planning board already, and we continued it to, because of the requirements for a certain amount of time for you to submit and not to have a hearing.
yeah,
We continued with the planning board with first iteration where we showed a less of pavement. And we were told in no uncertain terms that the planning board will not entertain a plan that does not strictly conform to each subdivision rules and regulations, vis-a-vis 34-foot wide pavement, to a sidewalk on both sides. I can forward to Megan what we have, and I believe not to put Ms. Gurley on the spot, she can weigh in terms of how the planning board has looked at its regulations.
so Azu, you're saying, I want to make sure I'm clear. You're saying that the standard is 34 foot width of paved roadway, not including sidewalks.
That is correct.
That's 17-foot travel lanes in a 3-lot or 4-lot subdivision. And how many of the units are even being, only 2 of the units are being served by the road?
They indicated that part of the reason is that the fire department lacks that width of road because people might park on the side of the road and they want to be able to get in and out with the cul-de-sac. I would even suggest that
other communities also have fire departments.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
There are ways it can be designed such that the fire trucks can get through. I would find it hard to believe that there's a 34-foot wide fire engine out there.
No, I couldn't.
I would like to propose that the commission draft a letter to the planning board strongly suggesting they consider waiving the standards for the roadway. That on so many levels, it makes sense. One, it reduces the impact in a buffer, the impervious impact in a buffer zone to a wetland resource area. It would reduce the stormwater management requirements. It reduces the heat island that effect of the pavement. And just makes good sense for such a small subdivision. And comments from the commissioners?
I personally agree, as a person who lives on a road that's outrageously wide. It's obnoxious. It's obnoxious when you look out your window and all you see is pavement because the road is enormous and has 2 sidewalks that are also enormous and generally under cared for and so barely usable anyway. So I definitely support drafting a letter to request a narrower roadway, especially given that this is not a main road. This is a side road. It's a cul-de-sac. It's not even going anywhere. So I think so long as the fire trucks are able to get in and out and there being a cul-de-sac, they can do that. I think it's a good plan.
Do we have a second on that? Or other comments, discussion? Laura, Joyce, you're very quiet.
I just have a question. I'm trying to understand one part of the process. If we were to, as a conservation committee, say we deny, period, because of the buffer zone and what it would do, the fact that we would deny it wouldn't push the hand more than just a letter to the planning board?
I don't see that happening. I see what they would tell the applicant. is design your project to meet the requirements of the Conservation Commission. I and in this instance, it just seems that you have a lot that's undeveloped. I would like to see more protection of the buffer zone, and I think a smaller, I mean, we could, I mean, that is an option. That certainly is an option.
Just with the history that I'm learning and listening to what the response is from the planning board, I'm just curious, you know, how much weight does a letter have? And then what would our next action be if they were to deny? Does that force our hand as a commission then to say, okay, we'll approve it? Or that's what I was just like thinking.
Yeah,
about the
no,
process.
I understand. I understand.
Madam Chairman, could I address that issue briefly?
Yes,
If the board is in favor of us going back to the planning board and asking for that waiver, I would ask that you consider doing it based on a continuance of this hearing. A denial, I think, would take standing away from the planning board,
yeah,
because we need to get a Conservation Commission approval first.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Thank you for articulating that. So would you be willing to continue? It sounds like Attorney Asak says yes, and we will draft a letter if the board, if that's what the commission feels they want to do.
I think that sounds reasonable.
I'm assuming there's a
Um,
lot of abutters here, but I don't know if they want to speak. And I'm guessing these are all abutters.
right, but I want to hear from the applicant
Yeah, okay.
before we,
Azu's concern is if we continue this, that the current owners of the property may not be willing to delay the project. I guess the timeline would be, we would then need to go in front of the Conservation Commission at your next available meeting, and then the planning board at their next available meeting. So we're probably going to eat up the rest of this year, and that may be a problem with the project. That may end the project. So I believe through Azu, we're asking that you consider allowing this. Maybe you could note that you strongly suggest the reduction of the roadway, and we can present that at the planning board hearing. In addition to reducing runoff, it would reduce the costs of the project. So we would be very much in favor of reducing this wide road. And with your support, we're happy to present that to the planning board.
are you on the planning board's agenda?
Yes, they are. Yes, we are.
When is the next meeting?
Do you know, Azu?
I believe it's the first Tuesday of October.
And our next meeting is the 20th of October.
But that would only be a month. It would not take you through to the end of the year.
Right,
Right. But if the planning board says no to those waivers, then we're back to the plan that we have. That's all.
Hmm.
Okay, so we can make that effort. So if the planning board says no, because they're insistent on their regulations being complied with, we will be very glad to see a reduction of on the pavement width for the road. We will be very glad to see a removal of one sidewalk. I just want to make sure that the board, the commission understands and see the predicament that we could be in, where you have two agencies, two boards that are sort of in conflict with their jurisdictional criteria and requirements, where you've got a project that complies with both requirements. And so I just want to echo that point.
Well, and I think the point, one of the things I'd point out here is this is a situation where the Conservation Commission is actually trying to work with the applicant to
Amen.
make this project work
Yeah.
and make it less expensive, less intrusive, better project overall for the
Very good.
community and the environment.
Mhm.
And, you know, if the planning board is that rigid, I just find it funny that the Conservation Commission gets a bad rap for approving projects and it's
Exactly.
something that makes so much
Exactly.
sense.
I am so in support of you, Madam Chair. It's unbelievable. And that doesn't happen very often.
But I am hearing Azu tell me that they were pretty adamant about
Yeah.
not reducing
So-
the roadway.
So they will see what we're doing, that we're reducing it. So, well, perhaps, Madam Chair, we will continue this hearing to your next hearing and then present before the planning board what waivers we're gonna be looking. I can actually draw a plan based on projects that actually show that a 22-foot wide pavement can work, one sidewalk, and at least use that as a discussion with the planning board and see if they will entertain those waivers. And
Yes.
then- Yes,
Azu,
Madam- yes,
nothing below
Pam,
24
Pam,
feet.
please, Pam, you need to be recognized by the chair.
I'm sorry.
And I'm not, and I'm not recognizing you
Okay.
right now. Thank you.
so, I would have a plan if the commission would send a correspondence to the planning board to say we would like, the commission would like to reduce the impacts on the BVW as well as reduce the overall environmental impact. I can have at least a plan for discussion with the planning board, keeping in mind that we have this plan that is before you already pending before the planning board. But at least we can use your support letter to make our case before the planning board for waivers.
So what does thank you, Azu. What do the commissioners think?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Megan, in your professional opinion, do you think it would do you think it would diminish the invasiveness of this project on the buffer zones? If it were, you know, if that much change was made in the impermeable surfaces?
So what would change by reducing the footprint size of the road? You would decrease impervious surface. That would presumably have benefits for the stormwater management in terms of increasing runoff from that surface. That increase would be lessened. Water quality, it's hard to say, but you would presume water quality would not be any worse with a smaller road than it would be with a bigger road. So certainly there are stormwater benefits to reducing the road. I would say in terms of the overall footprint, from what I can tell, would not change. So in terms of the limit of work, the limit of clearing, I would assume that lot is going to be clear cut either way. So, you know, it's not that the whole footprint changes. The road layout would change. It would have definite benefits for stormwater management. And therefore, because there is going to be runoff to the wetland, smaller road would be better again for rates of runoff, water quality to the wetlands, even if it doesn't change the overall project footprint in terms of, I would assume that land that would have been road would be lawn for the house lots, I would presume. So you're looking at the difference between lawn and pavement and the benefits that come with that.
And just to add to Megan's comment, it would actually, because you are reducing the impervious areas, that will result in less volume required for retention. Therefore, we can gain yet additional separation that increases the 25-foot no touch to perhaps 30, 35. So you will gain that lateral amount of because I'm not gonna use the same amount of volume for stormwater drainage, right? That drainage basin will be reduced because the volume of runoff will be reduced. So that concern that was talking about potential encroachment on the 25 foot will be totally eliminated.
Yeah. Joyce,
So,
does
yes,
that
I-
answer your question?
Because, Megan, do you agree?
I would
with
just
that?
add to that, yes, and that might be what the commission would like to see. I think ultimately the idea, at least what I would assume the commission would prefer is that if the roadway is made smaller, like as Zeus says, the footprint of the road is smaller, the footprint of the stormwater basins
Yes.
could possibly be smaller. And so if that was the case, then the applicant would consider bringing in the footprint. I think that would be what the commission ideally would like to see, that a reduction in everything does lead to a reduction in footprint in terms of limit of work, limit of clearing. I think that would be the ideal situation from this. Again, it depends on how the numbers work out. That could happen, but I would think that's what the commission would like to see.
And I think those are the kinds of things that should be reflected in a letter to the planning board.
Mhm.
Those,
Yeah.
that information.
Right off the bat, if I eliminate one sidewalk, now all of a sudden that drainage basin gets pulled over to the side closer to the road, because then that sidewalk will not take up that space. And then the space that I would have had between the sidewalk and the basin will also be eliminated. So you have an overall reduction so it'll be a win-win. I think that'd be great.
So I would recommend, that the commission's letter makes that specific, that they're not looking for a reduction of the road just so that, the house lots then become bigger.
Right,
It
right,
should be that
exactly.
the road becomes smaller and it pulls the whole footprint in.
Right,
I think that would
right,
be-
which is what I said at the beginning, that's all the reasons that it makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the commission needs to be specific that should be the ultimate result. It's not you're not just looking for the road to be smaller. You're looking for the road to be smaller so that the footprint and the limit of work is
Yes,
away from the wetlands.
yep,
Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking.
yep.
So may I inquire?
Okay.
If the applicant requests a continuance, when would we be on your next meeting?
October 20th is our next meeting.
Right.
And I would suggest, Megan, you and I can, if you could draft the letter, then if that's the decision the board makes and the applicant makes, then if you drafted it, we could review it and turn that around pretty quickly.
Which means that the planning board will have to continue to wait for the October decision of the planning Concom. So. So if you force their hand.
Can I make a motion that a letter be drafted to the planning board, outlining what we've discussed?
Do I have a second?
Sparks
You
here. I'll
are
second that.
making a motion, right, Joyce? You are making a motion?
Yeah.
Second?
I seconded. Sparks here.
Okay, all in favor? Danielson, aye?
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth.
All right.
Okay, so that we have voted to send a letter to the planning board, one way or another.
Thank you. And
What is your pleasure at this moment, Mr.?
One of the options, Azu, I'm going to say it out loud, and I'm not sure it's a good option at all, would be to ask this board to consider approving this project subject to the waiver by the planning board. Then when we get to the planning board, we won't have to go back to the Concom.
Either don't waive it.
I'm not sure what message that would send to the planning board from the Concom, but that's an option we could ask. Any opinion on that?
I would be, I don't recall of any particular instance in my time as chair that was done, but I would guess that that may have, that has happened in the past.
Mr. Asek, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I don't know. I think what Azu is suggesting that the board approve contingent. So a couple of things. Approve the project contingent that the planning board allow the waivers that they're requesting for the sidewalk, the roadway standards, a waiver from the roadway standards. There are a couple of things. One, I'm not sure I like that the message that's sending the planning board, but it could be interpreted as that the commission believes that the project needs to have a reduced roadway in order for it to really protect the wetland resource areas. The other is, and again, I don't know, I think the board should be very aware that it would be easily appealable. And that may be okay with the board if the planning board doesn't move forward. I'm not sure it's going to sway the planning board. DEP, I don't think would uphold, and I'm not sure that would be the intent of the commission in this case, but I don't think DEP would uphold a denial contingent on planning board approval of a waiver.
I agree. My plan, and again, this is not completely thought out, but my plan would be, if we went to the planning board with the conditional approval and the planning board rejected it, we would come back in front of the Conservation Commission and again ask that you approve that width of the roadway because we're bound by the planning board.
And you could do that. You could ask the board to reconsider or reopen the hearing.
That's what I'm thinking.
There's not necessarily a formal process through the wetlands protection regulations. Again, in my other life, I have seen that happen on a couple of occasions where the board has been amenable to do that, to
We could
work
file
with the
a
client, to
we
work
could
with the
file a
client.
modification.
But this is a little different.
Would it be an amendment, Stephanie? A request for an amended order of conditions?
I think that's how we did it, because I believe we re-notified abutters. We reopened it. It was, in essence, yes.
Any
it is an
amendment, any formal amended order of conditions would.
This would have to be too, because in those instances, the applicant came back to work with the commission and the project, it ended up with less impact. And this is, you'd be coming back asking the commission to approve this project, which is more than what we would hope to see.
So just for my own edification, Madam Chair, is it possible if the commission were to approve the project as presented with the letter that is sent to the planning board strongly worded that the commission would like to see a reduction, and then if they approve the reduction, then we will, which is what we were looking for, we'll be looking for, then we can come back for an amended order to allow a reduced roadway. Only because if the planning board says no.
Yeah. I don't know, Megan, what do you, I mean,
it'll be in our best interest to come back to get a approval for a reduced roadway. I mean, it won't hit, it's not rocket science for us to recognize that. So only because, quite frankly, the owner of the property wants to actually move. And this will show good faith effort so that he doesn't think that Mr. Heichel is just a dilly-dallying and not doing what he's supposed to do. So I would plead with the commission to approve the project with the understanding that we are gonna go to the planning board and request those waivers. And with the support of your letter, then they can waive that. If they decide they're not gonna waive it, then we have an approval. But the fact is that the planning board might still say, okay, we hear you, but we're not gonna waive that. You know?
Right, I understand what you're saying. Again, I'm turning it back to the commissioners and what your thoughts are. I just, oops, I'm sorry. I just have one question for Mr. Utinero. Azu, again, please refresh my memory because we've talked about a lot of things.
Sure.
Are you scheduled for a meeting with the planning board, hearing board?
Yes, ma'am. We actually have a.
That's the next. I think you gave the date, which okay. All right.
Yeah, on this plan,
So-
we have the hearing.
Right. So I'm sorry, Bonnie, you were.
Yeah, I mean, I've never personally worked with the planning board, but to me, it almost feels sort of like undermining. I don't know how comfortable I feel basically putting in that expectation without having, I feel like the formal letter is a much better option than just kind of almost making the decision for them. It just doesn't feel like the right way to approach it, in my opinion.
And we can't make the decision for them, so.
But I feel like doing that makes it sound like that's what we're
trying
trying to do. And I
Yeah.
think that could
Yeah.
come across the wrong way and cause possible difficulties in the future if we ever do need to work with something in this manner. I don't know. I foresee it not being a positive result. But that's just me. Like I said, I've never worked with them, so I don't know. But that's how I feel about that proposition.
Then I would ask on behalf of the applicant, and I do agree with those sentiments, there is a risk there. I would ask on behalf of the applicant that you approve this project, that you send the letter that you've already approved by vote, recommending they reduce it, and we'll go to the planning board, I believe, as you said, October 22nd, and fight
No,
hard.
this is if we continue this, then will be continued to the 22nd.
Right.
The planning board is the first Tuesday of October.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll fight hard for the reduction. Thank you.
So,
And
so Mr. Asak, you're asking the commission to close the hearing and take a vote?
Correct.
Well, it all depends on what you think with the Brian.
We need to make a decision and move on, so.
So okay, I guess, Madam Chair, what we're asking for, and just for the benefit of the applicant and the owner of the land to show good faith effort on our part, perhaps my suggestion would be that the commission send a letter, vote to approve the project that we have based on the fact that it complies with
Okay, so.
right, and then, but then we will request that you not issue your decision. Well, we'll ask an extension of your decision to show that we will rather come back and get it reduced.
Okay, so we've already, the board has already voted to send the letter, and Megan will draft that and send it around for comments. The first step is, so I'm going to go through the process. The first step would be to close the hearing. The second step is the other thing is when we close the hearing, we could issue a decision at the next meeting. We don't have to issue a decision this evening.
Correct.
I'm sorry, that slipped my mind. We don't have to issue a decision tonight. We're supposed to issue a decision within 21 days. It will be more than 21 days between now and our meeting. But if the applicant, I believe, and Pam, could you weigh in on this one, or Megan? I believe that if they issue, they allow us to go beyond the 21 days that we can issue and vote. We can vote at our next meeting. And what we would want, please let me finish. What we would want is that continuance go more than the 30 or 31 days to our next meeting, but for enough time beyond that for the physical issuance of the decision. So not just to the 30 days, because we can't have next day, Pam's gonna get everything, Pam and Megan have to get everything out the door. That won't work.
We would agree
So-
with that, Madam Chair. We would agree with that. And we will send a letter requesting that you delay your issue your decision until such a time. Yes.
So all we would be doing tonight is voting to close the hearing.
Madam
And then
Chair,
issue.
can I
Yes,
just ask that you
please,
set a deadline for that date?
Yes,
Letter to be
Yes.
received?
yes. Could you, and what, do you know off the top of your head when that would be, you would like to
At
see
least
that?
prior to the planning board meeting?
Oh, you mean the letter that we're sending?
No, the letter that,
Oh, yes, yes.
Sue will be sending agreeing to continue the time.
I guess I kind of expected it would be tomorrow.
Yeah, I will email, I can send you an email right now.
So the
Well, that is-
deadline will be tomorrow, let's see, Friday or when is the planning board meeting, Pam?
The 5th of October.
Yeah, we want
Actually having this month's meeting next week.
yeah. So no later than next Wednesday.
Or we can send you the letter by the end of business tomorrow.
That's a great.
Okay, that works really well.
Yeah,
But absolutely, if all we're saying is, if it's not received in the office by Wednesday,
now what date, Madam
we
Chair?
need, yeah,
What date you need it extended to? That's so that we can reflect that in the letter.
Stephanie, can we clarify what
Do you want
are
45 days?
extending?
The applicant would be granting the board the right to extend its obligation to make a decision within 21 days. And we would ask to extend it until our next.
Until the date that they need to write the decision. So they're gonna give us the date they wanna write the
No,
decision.
they have to write it in 21 days. We're going to waive the 21 days.
Right.
And ask that they hold off the decision until
It's
sometime.
a specific date.
issuing the decision until, is that, so Megan,
And this is functionally different than continuing?
Anytime you get it.
it is because the hearing will be closed and the board, there will be no more testimony or deliberation other than
Okay.
on the facts and the decision. The deliberation will have to be what the decision will be.
But they're not gonna meet.
Okay, and then also, just as a reminder, then, if there will be a vote to close the hearing,
I'm sorry, excuse me, could we, Megan's talking and we can't hear her.
so if there will be a vote tonight to close the hearing, we should make sure you get the any abutter input.
Yes,
Because they won't be
yes.
able to. If you
Yes,
vote here.
okay, so thank you for that reminder. So before
Madam
we close, yes,
Chair?
yes,
If we count dates,
yeah,
give him the amount of time. I thought 45 days, but that won't be enough. So I think it's in order to give the commission time, you probably want 65, 70 days.
that many? Because
Well-
if we continue to the
Well,
next,
because you're continuing
if
to
we-
the next meeting, which is 30 days.
right, and then at that meeting, the commission would vote,
Right, but then they still need to issue, so.
right, and that's how many days, so I was thinking 10 days,
After that,
yeah, sufficient. How,
today's the 15th, so, but
I mean, you must be doing this
two,
pretty quickly anyway, because we just have monthly meetings.
3, 4, So that's 21, 30, 45 days?
So just add 10 days, just add 10 days to your next hearing date. And that will be the date that we go for. So whatever your next hearing date is, add 10 days to that, and that's what we'll be requesting.
All right, well, the next hearing date's 30 odd days away, and another 10 days is 40 days, so.
Yeah, I think 45 is reasonable. Again, you know, staff has to prepare everything and get it actually issued.
Okay.
You will know what your decision is that night because the board will vote
Right,
that night.
right, okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so at this point, Megan, do you have any other comments before I ask if there are members of the public that wish to be heard?
Okay, so just to clarify then, after the hearing is closed, we will be receiving a letter from the applicant waiving the 21 days to issue an order of conditions.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
And we're
yes.
requesting, and we're gonna be requesting that at least verbally tonight, so that it's on record, because you're
But
recording.
it's so Azu, I think we know where we're going.
Okay, thank
I
you.
want to make sure. Okay, all set, Megan?
Okay.
Are there any members of the public who would like to be heard? If so, please raise your hand by clicking on the little hand icon. If you are calling in, which I don't think anybody is, it is *9 on your phone. Okay, I see no hands. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
Sparks here. I make a motion to close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
Morris here, second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Morris, aye.
Clara.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you as well. The last item, it is the last item too, on the agenda is notice of intent for map 119-028 and 029 Industrial Boulevard. Would anyone here for that project, please raise your hand. So we have Claire, Jean Sullivan,
Hello.
good evening. Who is going to be presenting this evening?
I'll start. So for the record, Claire Hogan with LEC Environmental Consultants representing the applicant. Joining me is Jean Sullivan, the engineer who's been working on the project as well. Just to provide a brief summary, I know it's been a long night already, so just a brief summary of where we left off. We presented at the July 21st public hearing and went through the project then. And we had a focused discussion on the location of the compensatory flood storage area that the project is proposing to restore previously unauthorized fill within the BLSF. So the result of that discussion was that you commission members had requested that we prepare an alternatives analysis that summarized other alternatives that might reduce or minimize the impacts in the 25-foot riverfront area. So as such, we did prepare a supplemental report that summarized 3 alternatives that we had evaluated, one of which just evaluated a compensatory flood storage area outside of the 25-foot riverfront area. We eliminated that because it would have resulted in an elevated berm between the flood storage area and the Salisbury Plain River, which in theory just did not really make sense or sort of pass the straight face test as far as functioning in the real world. It was presumed that any flood waters exceeding the Salisbury Plain River would probably just continue further downstream before they overtopped and went into the compensatory flood area. So we eliminated that option. Another option that we eliminated was actually the one we presented initially to the Conservation Commission. That particular impact resulted in, I believe, about 1,800 square feet of impact in the 25-foot riverfront area. So we eliminated that because Gene designed our preferred compensatory flood storage layout, which is depicted on revised plans dated August 30th that have been provided. That has reduced the impact in the 25-foot riverfront area to 850 square feet. So a little over 1,000 square feet reduction with the proposed layout. And as such, we believe that this proposed layout we have on the revised plans is the most reasonable layout. While it still does result in some impacts, it's the least amount that we could determine while still providing functional compensatory flood storage. And additionally, while we didn't discuss this at the last meeting, we did address Massachusetts DEP's comment, and we were issued a certificate of compliance for the previous superseding order of conditions. So that sort of procedural situation is squared away. We've provided a copy of that in our supplemental package for your records. And lastly, Beta provided some revised comments to the stormwater design last week. Gene Sullivan had addressed that in a report that he submitted to Megan this morning. And I understand that that is a tight time frame to review or provide any comments. But I can pass that on to Gene if he has anything he wants to touch base on that might shed any light for the commission members to consider.
Thank you, Claire. For the record, Gene Sullivan of ETS Inc. I'm the engineer of record for the project. We had responded back in the end of August to a memo from Beta to deal with probably about 15 items. Most of them were fairly straightforward, clerical cleanup little things. There were 2 items that I did not respond to because I didn't understand what he was asking for. And then one of them was to add a monitoring well in each infiltration basin, which I have never done before in all my life, but we did. That was in the memo today. We agreed that we would do that, whereas it was cited in the Stormwater Handbook. And secondly, he had asked for a means of draining the basins in case of times of high groundwater to allow maintenance to happen within the basins. So basically, we added a 6-inch under drain to the bottom of the basins near the wetlands, wrapped in stone that would have a valve on it, which would normally be closed or always be closed, unless there was a situation where for maintenance reasons, it had to be opened and allow the basin to drain if it wasn't performing properly. So we agreed to those 2 items. We also provided some backup calculations for how we calculated the existing time of concentration flows. They were well below what we use as a minimum, but he asked us to provide them anyways. So we had done that. The only issue that is looming or hasn't been 100% addressed as of today is the request to provide additional test pits. When we first started out, we had located test pits where we anticipated probably some subsurface systems as opposed to ponds. We ended up pulling back pavement in a lot of areas and creating these basins and handling our runoff in that manner. So one of the basins adjacent to the wetlands only had 1 pit in it, although we had plenty of the required separation from groundwater. And the basin at the front near Industrial Boulevard, we missed those by 10 or 15 feet. Because again, I thought it would be subsurface under the parking lot. But we have plenty of separation there. We did do confirmatory test pits today. However, the bad news is I did not get the results back yet. We're confident the basins that are near the wetlands and have the greatest or the closest elevation to groundwater, we have good testing in that area, and we are compliant with the stormwater regs. So that's really where we stand as far as addressing the concerns of the Beta group. Happy to answer any questions.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
You said that they asked that a drain, that you be able to drain the basin in time, what I thought you said, in times of high groundwater. And you
For
couldn't-
maintenance access, only.
For maintenance access, not during
Yes,
times of high
not
groundwater.
during, no, sorry.
Okay,
I thought I said that.
I think you did say what I said, but it didn't seem to make sense. So, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Certainly.
Any questions from the commissioners? And I do have the plans from 831 up if anybody wants me to share the screen and take a look. You do, Bonnie?
Yeah, that would be nice. It's a lot easier to watch everything when it's
Yeah.
the screen share.
Megan, maybe that's something we can communicate to our applicants, that they should expect to be prepared to screen share.
I can screen share the drawings as well.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for lumping you in with everyone else tonight.
Yeah,
I wasn't
I was gonna
prepared to
say,
do
I'm
that.
prepared with them if you wanted to see them too.
We're all ready to
You
show
know,
them.
I'm going to stop sharing, and if you could do that, Claire, because
Sure,
it's
I'll share.
always, the applicant knows much better what they're trying to
If you could go to
display.
C2 and probably show them just what the changes to the flood storage. I think that was the biggest issue with the commission members last time we were with them.
Yeah, can you all see the plans on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm just zooming in over here to the compensatory flood storage area. I'll do a little more. There we go. So, and actually I might even have the older plans on my screen. Do you see the screens moving around, or do you only see that one PDF?
We just saw something move.
This
Do you
is the
still
new
only
one.
see-
That's a good view. I don't think
Do you
we'll
see
get
the
the other
two
one.
screen? Do you see the two plans or just one?
Just
one.
the current one.
I'm wondering if
Well, I
it might
think
not
this
do
is
it
the-
for me.
I'm literally
this is the
seeing your
important one.
Adobe. So what we see, what you see in Adobe is
Yeah, I just have,
Like what
I
we
guess, a
see.
separate screen show, or a separate Adobe page showing the old layout. But more importantly, I guess this is the new layout where we have the connection to elevation 70 here.
Mhm.
And the connection, I think what is going to like theoretically make more sense even compared to our previous design, which sort of had a universal connection at elevation 71, is that this one is allowing an even more seamless overflow into the compensatory flood storage area from the upstream portion of it. So ultimately the stream would flow and in a time of flooding overflow into the compensatory flood storage area and sort of make its way throughout the entire thing rather than having a whole span to sort of catch into in any direction. So at this point, the way that Jean sort of laid it out is we have a lot of the grading going right up to the 25-foot, and the only grading entering the 25-foot riverfront area is to ultimately connect into the grade.
Right. Yeah, we tried to redesign it to stay out of the 25-foot wherever we could, but and we also dropped the connection, as Claire said, to make it function more often or more simply by dropping it down another foot. So I think it works a lot better.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, Megan, would you like to add anything? You have several recommended conditions.
Yes, so I do agree that this proposed configuration is preferable both to the original design we saw and to the alternative of pulling all of it out of the riverfront. I do think avoiding the riverfront altogether might pose that issue of making it less functional for flood storage, which means it wouldn't do the flood restoration that we need it to do. So I think this, by reducing the riverfront impacts by 1,000 feet, that is a good compromise, good effort in terms of the alternatives analysis, demonstrating that this is minimizing impacts to riverfront to the extent practicable given the site. So my recommendations then for special conditions are related to just putting in some checkpoints to make sure that the restoration work is initiated, just because this is technically restoration compensatory storage. So again, we know there was unmonitored filling and earth moving on the site that has already taken place. So even if this project doesn't go forward right away, there's still unauthorized fill on the site, and really the restoration of flood storage needs to be done. That's why I'm recommending a condition with a time date. I think I put recommended within 1 year. We get proof that the compensatory storage work is underway, so that even if something else with the project is held up, I think it's still, that restoration work needs to be done either way, so that it's not a case of with the power plant in the previous, the project didn't go forward and the restoration was never done. So I would recommend a time-based condition so that there is still some assurance to the commission that the restoration work will go forward.
That's acceptable to us.
Okay, and so I think unless anyone has any other questions directly related to what Claire's showing, Claire, you can stop sharing your screen. I don't see any members of the public interested in speaking. So do I have a motion to close the hearing?
Sparks here. I make a motion to close the hearing.
Do I have a second? Yes, thank you. All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth?
Sorry.
All right, do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the special conditions outlined in Megan's report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Forsyth?
All right, all in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Forsyth?
Speak right.
All right, thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
all
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much. Have a great night.
You too. I don't think we have any other business before the commission. So if I have a,
discuss, if I could just make a note, I would like to on the next agenda discuss the draft of the
open
Wetlands
space.
Protection Ordinance.
Yes.
So I want to just make a note that I would like to put that on the October agenda so that we all have time to take a look at the draft that's in the folders, and I'll send an email again with that link. So if in the next month we can take a look, and I think the main things we want to consider, and Stephanie will probably help guide us with that, is this ordinance language adding protections that we want that the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't give? And then also the other concern I think of the city is enforcement. Is this ordinance going to provide any additional support of the commission for enforcing orders of conditions and enforcing violations? So if we could take a look at that with those two thoughts in mind to see if that language, the language is pulled a lot from other towns and other cities. So it's not, you know, it's language that appears elsewhere, but it might need to be modified to fit our needs. So if we could all look at that, I would like to put it on the agenda for October.
Yes, that sounds good.
Megan, is it the one that's in the drive right now, or are you going to change that one at all?
That is the one I'd like us to look at that language, and we can discuss more at the meeting in terms of, again, is it providing the protections, the additional protections we would like to see, and is it going to help with enforcement?
So if I were to print up what's in the drive right now for a road trip that I'm taking tomorrow, so I could go through it? The one that's in the drive?
Yes, it's the one in the drive that says ordinance draft 2021. I'll email everyone a link right after this so you can get directly to it.
Great.
But that's what we'd be starting with. And again, that language is based on other ordinances and bylaws, but it may or may not be the exact language that's most helpful to us.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I am looking, but I don't see it, so I'll check the email that you send.
Yeah, I'll send an email with a more direct link.
Perfect.
And also,
excuse me.
will you send just a copy of the draft that will go to the planning board, just so we have an idea of how that will be worded, or no? Will that just?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank
I
you.
can do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, they have a motion to adjourn.
Good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Sparks.
I think you know, when I was the chair a while back, I don't think we ever did a motion to adjourn. I think we just said bye. I think you just did like, oh, meeting's over. Megan, do you have just 2